Emily Carter believed there were only two kinds of bosses in the world, those who ignored you and those who disliked you. Lucas Harper, the CEO of Harper Dynamics, was not the type to raise his voice or show anger. He was calm, distant, and impossibly cold. Every morning he walked past her desk without a glance. Every meeting ended without a word of praise. To Emily, the message felt clear. He did not want her there. What she never imagined was that his silence was hiding something far more dangerous than hate. What Emily did not know was that Lucas Harper noticed everything. The way she stayed late without being asked. The way she defended decisions that were not hers. The way she never used his name to gain power. To the rest of the office, she was invisible. To Lucas, she was impossible to ignore. And that was exactly the problem. Because the more he noticed her, the colder he forced himself to become. And Emily mistook that distance for hatred. Hello and welcome. Thank you for being here and for giving your time to this story. Wherever you are watching from today, you are truly appreciated. Before we continue, take a moment to tell us in the comments which country you are watching from and how old you are. We love learning about the people who share these moments with us. May your days be peaceful, your nights calm, and your heart steady wherever life takes you. If you enjoy stories that explore emotion, silence, and unexpected love, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next chapter. Emily Carter started her job as the executive secretary with quiet determination. She was not loud, not ambitious in appearance, and never tried to impress anyone. Every morning she arrived before sunrise, organized schedules, reviewed documents, and prepared meetings with precision. Yet no matter how perfectly she performed, Lucas Harper never acknowledged it. His instructions were brief. His tone was flat. When she spoke, he listened without expression. In a building full of noise and power, his silence felt heavier than words. Around the office, people whispered. Some said the CEO disliked her work. Others assumed she had made a mistake early on that could never be forgiven. Emily heard it all, but she never defended herself. She believed hard work would speak louder than rumors. Still, every time Lucas corrected her in meetings without emotion, something inside her tightened. She replayed every interaction at night, wondering what she had done wrong, and why nothing she did ever seemed enough. Lucas Harper had built his reputation on discipline and control. He believed leadership required distance. Personal feelings were weaknesses he could not afford. When Emily joined his team, he noticed her immediately. Not because she demanded attention, but because she never did. She worked without expectation. She accepted criticism without resentment. That frightened him more than ambition ever could, so he did what he always did when emotions surfaced. He buried them under professionalism. One afternoon during a board meeting, Lucas questioned a report Emily had prepared. His voice was calm but firm. The room fell silent. Emily corrected the error confidently, without blaming anyone. The board nodded in approval. Lucas said nothing. No apology. No acknowledgement. Later that evening, Emily sat alone at her desk, staring at her screen, whispering to herself that maybe tomorrow would be different. She did not see Lucas watching quietly from his office door. As weeks passed, the pressure grew. Lucas began assigning Emily responsibilities far beyond her role. Complex schedules, confidential negotiations, sensitive communications. She never complained. She never asked for favors. To Lucas, this confirmed something important. She was not there for shortcuts. She was there because she believed in the work. But instead of relief, this realization made him more distant. The closer he felt to her integrity, the more he forced himself away. The office noticed the change. People began watching Emily more closely. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Someone once joked that she had special access to the CEO. Lucas heard the comment and responded by becoming even colder toward her in public. He believed distance would protect her reputation. Emily felt punished instead. She started eating lunch alone. She stopped speaking unless spoken to. What Lucas thought was protection felt like rejection. Emily began questioning herself in ways she never had before. She replayed every task, every email, every meeting, wondering if her presence was a mistake. She noticed how Lucas spoke to others with brief courtesy but treated her with cold precision. No warmth, no softness. She told herself it was professionalism, yet her chest tightened every time he addressed her by last name only. Never Emily, as if distance itself was a rule he refused to break. Late one afternoon, Emily overheard two colleagues whispering near the break room. They spoke softly, but the words were sharp. They said the CEO was unusually hard on her. They wondered if she was failing, or worse, if she had disappointed him personally. Emily stood frozen, her hand still on the coffee machine. She did not confront them. She did not defend herself. She simply returned to her desk, feeling smaller than she had ever felt in that building. Lucas noticed the change in her demeanor before anyone else did. She stopped asking questions. Her emails became shorter, her posture more guarded. It disturbed him deeply. He had intended to challenge her professionally, not diminish her spirit. Yet he said nothing. Speaking would mean acknowledging his feelings, and acknowledging them meant risking control. So he remained silent, convincing himself that distance was still the safest choice, even as it slowly hurt them both. That night, Emily opened her laptop at home and stared at a drafted resignation letter. She did not write it out of anger. She wrote it out of exhaustion. She wondered if there was something wrong with wanting to be seen, even once. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she whispered that maybe walking away was the only way to stop feeling invisible. She saved the document, unsure if she would ever send it. The next morning, Emily arrived earlier than usual, carrying the weight of a decision she had not yet made. Lucas noticed her eyes looked tired, distant. During a briefing, she answered questions calmly, but avoided eye contact entirely. For the first time, Lucas felt something he could not ignore. Fear, not of scandal, not of gossip, but of losing her presence. He realized his silence had become a wall she no longer tried to climb. During a tense executive meeting, a senior manager criticized a scheduling error that was not Emily's fault. The room waited for Lucas to respond. Emily braced herself, expecting the familiar cold correction. Instead, Lucas paused longer than usual. He corrected the manager calmly, redirecting responsibility without raising his voice. Emily looked up in surprise. It was the first time he had publicly protected her. The moment passed quickly, but it left a quiet crack in her certainty that he hated her. After the meeting, Emily stood outside Lucas's office, unsure whether to speak. Her hand hovered near the door. Inside, Lucas sat staring at his desk, replaying her expression when he defended her. He realized how close he had come to losing her trust completely. He also realized something else. The distance he thought was noble had become cruel. For the first time, he questioned whether control was worth the cost of silence. That evening, Lucas stayed alone in his office long after the building emptied. He looked at Emily's name on the organizational chart and understood the truth with painful clarity. He had never hated her. He had been afraid of how deeply he respected her. And somewhere along the way, respect had turned into something far more dangerous. Love. And now, if he waited any longer, he might lose her before she ever knew. Emily spent the next few days moving through the office like a shadow. She completed her tasks flawlessly, yet something inside her had already begun to detach. The resignation letter waited quietly on her laptop at home, no longer feeling like an escape, but a necessity. She told herself that staying where she felt unwanted was not loyalty, it was self-betrayal. Every time Lucas passed her desk without a word, her resolve grew stronger. Lucas sensed the shift immediately. Emily no longer lingered after meetings. She no longer double-checked instructions or asked for clarification. Her work remained excellent, but her presence felt distant. It alarmed him. He realized he had mistaken her silence for endurance, when in truth it was withdrawal. For the first time in years, Lucas found himself distracted during meetings, replaying moments where he could have spoken, but chose not to. One afternoon, Lucas requested a report, and Emily delivered it without hesitation. As she placed the folder on his desk, their eyes met briefly. There was no resentment in hers, only acceptance. That expression unsettled him more than anger ever could. He opened his mouth to speak, then stopped. Old habits of restraint took over. Emily nodded politely and turned away, already emotionally preparing for a goodbye he did not yet understand. That night, Emily finalized her resignation letter. She read it slowly, making sure her words were calm and respectful. She thanked the company for the opportunity and wished them continued success. There was no accusation, no emotion. When she closed her laptop, she felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. She had decided that if someone truly valued her, they would not make her feel invisible for this long. The following morning, Lucas noticed something missing before he even reached his office. Emily's desk was too neat, too final. A subtle panic rose in his chest. He checked his calendar and saw a private meeting request from her, scheduled for the afternoon. The word resignation echoed in his mind, uninvited and unwelcome. For the first time in his career, Lucas Harper felt powerless against a decision he might have caused. Throughout the day, Lucas struggled to focus. Every file blurred into the next. He thought about the standards he had set, the distance he had enforced, and the silence he had mistaken for strength. He finally admitted the truth to himself. He had not been protecting professionalism. He had been hiding from his own feelings. And now those feelings threatened to cost him the one person who had never asked for anything in return. When Emily entered his office that afternoon, she stood straight and composed. She thanked him for his time and handed him an envelope. Lucas did not open it. He already knew what it contained. For a moment, the room was silent. Then he spoke her name softly. For the first time. Emily. The sound startled them both. She looked up, confused. And in that moment, Lucas realized how much power a single word could carry. Lucas asked her to sit, not as her CEO, but as a man who had made a mistake. He did not explain everything, not yet, but his tone was different, honest, unguarded. Emily felt it immediately. Something had shifted. She did not know what would come next, but she knew this conversation was not the ending she had prepared herself for. It was the beginning of a truth she had never expected to hear. Emily sat across from Lucas, her hands folded neatly on her lap. She had prepared herself to remain calm, professional, and detached. Yet when Lucas looked at her without his usual guarded expression, her composure wavered. He asked why she wanted to leave, and for a moment she hesitated. Then she spoke honestly. She said she felt unwanted, that every day felt like proving her worth to someone who had already decided she was not enough. Lucas listened without interrupting. Every word landed heavier than he expected. Emily explained that she had never needed praise, only clarity. She said silence felt like rejection when it lasted too long. She admitted she had believed he disliked her, perhaps even resented her presence. As she spoke, Lucas realized how carefully she had endured everything without complaint. And he understood that his restraint had cost her more than he ever intended. When Emily finished speaking, the room felt different. Lucas took a slow breath and admitted something he had never said aloud before. He told her he had kept his distance on purpose. Not because of dislike, but because he respected her. He explained that he tested her professionalism because he feared favoritism. He wanted to be certain her loyalty was to the work, not the power attached to his name. Emily listened quietly, processing his words. She did not immediately feel relief. Instead, she felt confusion. Respect had never looked like this to her. She asked softly why he never explained. Lucas answered honestly. He said explaining would have required admitting he cared more than he should. The room fell silent again. This time the silence was not cold. It was heavy with truths that had waited too long to be spoken. Emily left the office that day without giving Lucas an answer about her resignation. She needed time to understand what she had just heard. As she returned to her desk, the office felt unfamiliar, as if she had stepped into a place she thought she knew, only to realize it had been hiding something all along. For the first time, she wondered if her belief that he hated her had been a shield protecting her from disappointment. Lucas remained seated long after she left. He stared at the empty chair across from him, replaying her words and his own admissions. He realized how rare it was for someone to speak to him without fear or expectation. Emily had done that, not to challenge his authority, but to express her truth. He understood then that his feelings had crossed a line long before he admitted them, and denying them had only deepened the damage. Over the next few days, Lucas changed subtly. He did not become warm or expressive, but he became present. He acknowledged Emily's work. He addressed her by her first name. Small gestures, barely noticeable to others, meant everything to her. Emily felt the shift, yet remained cautious. Trust she knew could not be rebuilt overnight. Still, something inside her softened. Emily did not submit her resignation the next day. Instead, she returned to work with a cautious sense of awareness. Nothing had been promised, yet something had undeniably changed. Lucas no longer treated her presence as invisible. He asked for her opinion during briefings and listened carefully to her responses. The shift was subtle, but for Emily, it felt like standing in sunlight after a long winter of silence. The office began to notice the difference as well. Lucas still maintained his composed authority, but his tone toward Emily softened just enough to be felt. He no longer corrected her in front of others without explanation. When meetings ended, he occasionally lingered to clarify expectations rather than dismissing her abruptly. Rumors quieted, replaced by curiosity. Emily remained focused, determined not to read too much into gestures that still carried professional weight. For Lucas, every interaction became a careful balance. He wanted to acknowledge Emily without crossing lines he had spent years enforcing. He realized how easily power could distort intention, and he refused to let that happen. Yet suppressing emotion no longer felt honest. He admired the way Emily handled responsibility without entitlement. Her integrity had not changed. What changed was his willingness to let her be seen. One afternoon, as Emily organized documents in his office, Lucas thanked her quietly for staying. The words stayed with her long after she returned to her desk. It was not a confession. It was not an invitation. But it carried meaning. Emily understood that for someone like Lucas Harper, gratitude was never given lightly. And for the first time, she felt valued not as an assistant, but as a person. As weeks passed, working late became a shared rhythm rather than a burden. Emily and Lucas spoke more freely about projects, strategies, and long-term goals. Conversations stayed professional, yet something warmer lived beneath them. Silence no longer felt sharp. It felt thoughtful. Emily noticed how Lucas waited for her input before making decisions. Lucas noticed how Emily no longer doubted her voice. Growth unfolded quietly between them. Despite the closeness, both remained cautious. Emily reminded herself that clarity mattered more than comfort. She refused to assume feelings where none had been spoken. Lucas, on the other hand, struggled with restraint. He felt the pull of wanting to protect her, support her, and be present beyond his role. Each day tested his discipline. He knew that crossing boundaries too soon could undo everything they had rebuilt. During a critical presentation to potential investors, Emily handled unexpected pressure with calm precision. Lucas watched her take control of the room without hesitation. Pride filled him, followed by something deeper. Admiration had become respect, and respect had grown into affection he could no longer deny. Lucas began to realize that what he felt for Emily could no longer be contained within professionalism alone. It was not desire nor impulse. It was concern, admiration, and an unfamiliar need to ensure she was okay even when work was done. He noticed how her absence from a meeting unsettled him. Emily, meanwhile, felt the emotional shift but refused to romanticize it. She had spent too long misreading silence to trust it again. One evening, after finishing a report, she stood at Lucas's office door and spoke calmly. She said she appreciated the change, but uncertainty was still uncertainty. She did not ask what he felt. She asked where she stood. Lucas answered honestly but carefully. He told her she stood where trust lived, where respect had grown. He admitted he was learning how to lead without hiding behind distance. Emily listened, unsatisfied but not disappointed. She told him clarity mattered to her more than comfort. She said she would not stay in a space where her emotions were left undefined. That night, Lucas walked home instead of calling a car. He needed time to think without interruption. He realized Emily was not asking him to choose her. She was asking him to be honest with himself. And honesty, he knew, would require courage he had not needed in boardrooms or negotiations. This was different. This was personal. Emily began setting boundaries of her own. She remained professional but emotionally reserved. She stopped staying late unnecessarily. She declined conversations that drifted too far from work. It was not punishment, it was protection. She had learned that hope without clarity could quietly exhaust a person. Lucas noticed the shift immediately. The distance he once controlled was now no longer his to decide. For Lucas, this change was unsettling. He realized how much emotional ground Emily had covered on her own. She was not waiting to be chosen. She was choosing herself. That realization forced him to confront the truth he had avoided. If he continued to hesitate, he would not lose control. He would lose her. And the thought of that loss felt heavier than any risk he had ever calculated. During a late strategy meeting, Lucas found himself distracted by the absence of her voice. When the meeting ended, he asked Emily to stay behind. His tone was calm, but something in it was different. He told her he respected her boundaries. He told her he was grateful she demanded clarity instead of comfort. Emily met his gaze steadily, waiting. Not expecting, waiting. Lucas did not confess love, not yet. But he admitted he could no longer pretend indifference. He told her his feelings had grown quietly, unintentionally, and deeply. He said he would never act on them without certainty and consent. Emily felt her breath steady. This was not romance. This was honesty. And for the first time, she believed that whatever came next would not be built on misunderstanding, but on truth. The days that followed were heavy with unspoken understanding. Lucas became acutely aware of every decision he made, knowing each one carried weight beyond business. His role as CEO demanded caution, distance, and image control. Yet his role as a man asked something different. He found himself questioning which version of himself he had been protecting all these years, and whether success meant anything if it required emotional isolation. Emily sensed the tension but did not rush him. She had made peace with uncertainty before and refused to relive that cycle again. She focused on her work, her growth, and her dignity. Privately, she acknowledged her feelings, but she did not cling to them. She believed that love, if real, would not require her to shrink or wait in silence. That belief grounded her. Meanwhile, whispers began circulating within the company. Nothing explicit, only subtle observations. Late meetings, quiet conversations, a shift in dynamic. Lucas heard them too. He called his legal advisor, not to hide anything, but to understand the consequences of transparency. For the first time, he considered that integrity might mean facing judgment instead of avoiding it. That realization marked a turning point. One evening, Lucas asked Emily to walk with him after work, not as his secretary, but as herself. He told her he was considering formal steps to remove any professional conflict if they chose to explore something real. Emily stopped walking and looked at him carefully. She said she did not need promises, only action aligned with words. Lucas nodded. He understood. This was no longer about fear. It was about responsibility. Lucas began restructuring roles within the company. Decisions were documented, transparent, and deliberate. He explained each step clearly, ensuring she never felt blindsided again. Emily listened not with excitement but with relief. For the first time, she saw consistency between his emotions and his leadership. With boundaries formally addressed, something between them softened. They spoke more openly, not about love but about values, about loneliness, ambition, and the cost of always being strong. Lucas admitted how power had isolated him. These conversations did not rush intimacy. They built understanding. And understanding became the foundation neither of them had ever known before. One quiet afternoon, Lucas asked Emily how she truly felt, without titles between them. She said she would walk away if love ever demanded silence or self-abandonment. Lucas accepted her words without defensiveness. He told her that was exactly why he admired her. Not despite her strength, but because of it. They did not define the relationship that day. They did not rush to label what was still growing. But they agreed on one thing. As they parted ways that evening, both felt lighter. Not because love was guaranteed, but because fear no longer controlled the outcome. And that, in itself, felt like a beginning. With roles clarified and expectations aligned, Emily and Lucas found a new rhythm. Their conversations no longer felt restrained by uncertainty. They spoke with ease, not as CEO and secretary, but as two individuals discovering compatibility. Workdays felt lighter. Laughter returned in small moments. Emily noticed how Lucas listened without planning his response. Lucas noticed how Emily spoke without fear of being misunderstood. They began spending time together outside the office, carefully and intentionally. Coffee after work, walks through quiet streets, conversations that wandered beyond deadlines and strategy. There was no rush, no dramatic gestures, just presence. Emily appreciated that Lucas never assumed access to her time. Lucas appreciated that Emily chose to share it. Each meeting reinforced the trust they had built piece by piece. Lucas learned to express affection in ways that felt authentic to him. He checked in without hovering. He supported without controlling. For someone who had built his life around authority, this vulnerability felt unfamiliar but grounding. Emily saw the effort and met it with patience. She did not romanticize his growth. She respected it, and respect, she realized, was deepening into something warmer. One evening, as they watched the city lights from a quiet overlook, Emily spoke softly. She said she felt safe. The word stayed with Lucas. Safe was not a word he had ever associated with love before, yet hearing it now, he understood its weight. It meant trust without fear. It meant care without obligation. And for the first time, he believed that love could be calm and still be powerful. The realization of love did not arrive suddenly. It unfolded in moments of consistency, in how Lucas remembered small details about Emily's day, in how Emily noticed when Lucas carried too much responsibility alone. Love emerged not as a declaration, but as a shared understanding that they mattered to each other beyond circumstance. One quiet morning, before the office filled with noise, Lucas told Emily he cared for her. He did not frame it as destiny or passion. He spoke simply, with sincerity. Emily listened without surprise. She had felt it too. She told him her feelings had grown slowly, protected by clarity and choice. There was no dramatic reaction, just mutual acknowledgement of something real. They agreed to move forward with intention, to communicate openly, to protect each other's autonomy as much as their connection. Emily expressed her need for independence. Lucas expressed his commitment to balance. Neither promised perfection. They promised honesty. As they stepped into this new chapter, both felt grounded rather than overwhelmed. Love did not change who they were. It revealed who they had been becoming all along. For Emily, it was affirmation without erasure. For Lucas, it was strength without isolation. Together, they realized that love, when built right, did not take power away. It shared it. Just as life seemed to settle into a gentle rhythm, an unexpected challenge surfaced. A senior board member questioned Lucas about recent organizational changes, hinting at personal motives behind professional decisions. The implication was subtle but sharp. Lucas responded with composure, outlining the documented process and ethical considerations. Still, the moment reminded him that scrutiny would always follow power, especially when happiness entered the picture. Emily learned about the conversation later that evening. She listened quietly, then spoke with clarity. She said she did not want to be a reason Lucas felt pressured or compromised. She offered to step back if needed. Her words were calm, not emotional. Lucas saw in that moment how deeply she valued integrity, and he realized how important it was for him to stand firm, not just as a leader but as a partner. Lucas reassured her that transparency had already protected them. He explained that leadership meant being accountable, not avoiding life. He told her he would not hide something built on respect and choice. Emily felt a quiet sense of pride, not in defiance but in mutual confidence. They were no longer navigating fear separately. They were addressing reality together. That night, they shared a quiet dinner at home. No grand celebration, just warmth and conversation. Emily realized that love no longer felt fragile. It felt steady. Lucas realized he no longer needed to prove anything. The challenges did not weaken them. They clarified what mattered. And what mattered was the life they were choosing with intention. Months passed, and the noise faded. Work continued. Growth followed. Emily transitioned into a new role aligned with her strengths, no longer directly reporting to Lucas. The shift felt natural, earned and respected. Their relationship was no longer defined by secrecy or tension. It was simply part of their lives, integrated without drama. They learned how to balance ambition and affection. Some days were busy and exhausting. Others were slow and quiet. Through it all, communication remained their anchor. They disagreed without dismissing each other. They supported without losing themselves. Love did not demand sacrifice of identity. It encouraged it. One evening, as they walked through the city they both loved, Lucas spoke about the future. Not in promises, but in possibilities. Emily listened, imagining a life built on shared values. She smiled, not because everything was certain, but because it felt right. Happiness did not arrive as a climax. It arrived as peace. Emily once believed the CEO hated her. Lucas once believed distance was safety. Time, honesty, and courage had rewritten both narratives. What began in misunderstanding ended in mutual choice. And in that choice, they found something lasting. Love that grew quietly. Love that stayed. Love that did not need to prove itself to be real. Looking back, Emily often wondered how close she had come to walking away from everything that eventually mattered. She remembered the days when silence felt like rejection, when professionalism felt like invisibility. Growth, she realized, was not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it happened in the quiet, moments where someone finally chose honesty over fear, and that choice had changed everything. Lucas reflected on how leadership had once been his shield. Authority gave him control, but it also kept people at a distance. Meeting Emily had forced him to confront a truth he had avoided for years. That strength without vulnerability was incomplete. He learned that respect did not diminish authority. It deepened it, and love, when chosen responsibly, did not weaken his position. It strengthened his humanity. Their story was not built on grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was built on listening when it was uncomfortable, on speaking when silence felt safer, on choosing clarity even when it required courage. Emily and Lucas understood that love was not something that happened to them. It was something they actively chose, again and again, with intention. In a world that often glorifies chaos and passion, their love stood quietly apart. It did not demand attention. It did not need validation. It simply existed, steady and real. And in that steadiness, they found something rare, a partnership where neither had to disappear for the other to shine. If this story teaches anything, it is that misunderstandings can shape entire realities when left unspoken. Emily once believed she was unwanted. Lucas once believed distance was protection. Both beliefs were wrong. Only through honesty did truth reveal itself. Love did not erase their past. It reframed it, turning pain into understanding and doubt into choice. Their ending was not marked by applause or spectacle. It was marked by peace, by waking up without fear, by choosing each other without obligation. Emily continued to grow into her own power. Lucas continued to lead with clarity and empathy. Together, they built a life that felt aligned, not perfect, but real. To everyone listening, thank you for staying with this story. We send our warmest greetings and deepest respect to you. Tell us where you are watching from and how old you are. May your days be filled with clarity, strength, and moments of quiet happiness. May love, in whatever form it comes, never require you to lose yourself. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps more stories like this find their way to those who need them. Until next time, take care of your heart, honor your worth, and remember that sometimes what begins as misunderstanding can grow into something truly beautiful.